I never believed in fate until one heartbreaking moment changed my life forever. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The air was thick and heavy, as if the sky itself was holding its breath. My heart raced, pounding against my ribcage, echoing my confusion. It was a typical Tuesday morning, but the world felt unusually still, as if it knew something I didn't. The first sign was the way the birds had abandoned their usual chatter, replaced by an eerie silence that stung at my senses. I stood there, trembling, clutching my phone. Labor Day weekend had just passed, and after one too many glasses of cheap wine, I had become a bundle of nerves. Sarah, my best friend from childhood, was in the hospital. She had always been the bright spark in my life, the one who could make me laugh even at my lowest. Her laughter felt like sunlight breaking through the suffocating clouds above. But now, the news hit like a punch to the gut. She had been in an accident. A freak accident. The kind that made people shake their heads and whisper, "How could this happen?" I rushed to the hospital, my mind racing with questions that twisted into knots of anxiety. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, a sterile white that felt too harsh against the chaos in my heart. Every step felt like wading through molasses, each heartbeat quickening as I approached the waiting room. The walls closed in around me as fear clawed at my insides. I looked around at the other families, their faces a patchwork of worry, anger, and despair. Once I reached her room, I stood in the doorway, heart in my throat, hands shaking. The sight of her, so fragile and broken, made my breath hitch. Machines beeped in rhythm like a twisted lullaby. I wanted to scream, to shake someone awake, to make the world listen. It wasn't fair. I reached for her hand, cold and pale, tears blurring my vision. The silence screamed louder than the machines around us. This was my best friend, the girl who had danced with me on rooftops and spoke in dreams of the future. "Please, Sarah, come back to me," I whispered, the lump in my throat tightening painfully. My mind raced with memories, each one a small spark in the dark, her wildly messy hair, her infectious grin, and the way she reminded me that life was precious. And now, she lay there, fighting for breath, for life. The world spun on its axis, oblivious to my torment. Suddenly, a ruckus erupted in the hallway, shouted questions, scattering footsteps. I jumped at the sound, adrenaline pouring through my veins. The doctor emerged, eyes solemn, a grim expression etched into his features. "There's been a complication," he started. My heart sank, each word feeling like a nail in a coffin that I couldn't breathe. My pulse pounded in my ears as I struggled to comprehend what could be worse than the reality before me. Was I about to lose the one person who understood every part of me? I glanced back at Sarah, her machines beeping still. The urgency in his tone twisted in my stomach, a foreboding shadow looming over my heart. What were they not telling me? What else could go wrong? And just then, a chilling thought struck me: what if her accident wasn't an accident at all? I looked around, feeling eyes on me, judging, whispering. No one spoke, but the tension in the air was thick, suffocating. I felt a shiver run down my spine. What if it was fate? A dark force playing its hand? As my thoughts spun, I heard a distant cry, but it sounded like my own voice. "Sarah!" I screamed, desperate and raw, hoping against hope that somehow, it would reach her. What was going to happen next? Would fate weave its cruel threads tighter around us, or was there still a glimmer of hope left? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The sterile smell of antiseptic hung thick, permeating the air like an unwelcome blanket. I remained rooted to the spot, tightly gripping Sarah's cold hand, as if my warmth could somehow bring her back to life. Each second felt drawn out, like time itself had decided to mock my suffering. Voices murmured outside her room, muffled and indistinct, and I focused on the rhythmic beeps and hisses of the machine's only connection to her still fighting spirit. The doctor had said something about a complication, but none of it registered in my mind. I was trapped in a fog of despair. Visions flashed before my eyes, moments of laughter, adventures untaken, and shared dreams that felt like they belonged to another life. The memories danced and taunted me, reminding me of the vast emptiness that lay ahead, but then, a faint voice cut through the haze. What happened? Is she going to be okay? It was my mother, her face pale and drawn. I could see the worry etched in her features, but I found no comfort in her presence. I felt angry at Sarah for being in this position, and angry at destiny for dealing us such a cruel hand. Even in my turmoil, I knew it was irrational. My own mother felt like an intruder when all I wanted was to be alone with my thoughts. I don't know, I managed to choke out, my voice barely a whisper. My grip on Sarah's hand tightened, and I willed her to squeeze back, to show any sign of life. Yet, the only response was the steady beep of a heart monitor. It seemed to echo my own heartbeat, reminding me of how fragile everything truly was. Just then, an unexpected figure loomed at the door. A nurse, her demeanor calm, walked in with a gentle smile that brought with it a flicker of warmth. "I'm checking on your friend," she said softly, her voice soothing amidst the chaos. She approached the machines, adjusting a few dials, and my chest tightened, afraid of any change. "You're doing everything you can. She can feel you here with her." I met her gaze, searching for any glimmer of hope, her demeanor radiating a kindness I desperately needed. She reached out, brushing her fingers over Sarah's hair delicately. "She's a warrior," the nurse continued, "and friends like you are crucial in a battle like this." With that, something shifted within me. Despite the unease coiling around my heart, I realized that maybe there was a glimmer of light somewhere in this darkness, a chance however small that Sarah would pull through. But just then, the door swung open again with a suddenness that startled me. A tall figure stepped in, cloaked in a sense of urgency. It was Michael, the boy from high school who had crushes written all over him in my notebook. He had always lingered in the background of my life until now. All I could recall were the awkward glances shared in the hallways and the briefest of conversations. "What are you doing here?" I stammered, confusion flooding my tone. "I heard about the accident," he said, concern furrowing his brow. "I had to come." His sincerity struck a chord, unexpected in the chaotic storm swirling around us. There was warmth in his presence, a reminder of how the universe often surprised us even when we thought things were hopeless. Without waiting for permission, he approached Sarah's bed, his expression shifting from worry to determination. "Hey, Sarah. You've got a lot of people here who love you. Keep fighting." It was a simple message, yet it resonated. A moment of silence enveloped us. I felt a rush of emotion, stirrings of kindness from someone I hardly knew, coupled with gratitude for Sarah's past that linked us all together like a thread through a tapestry. Then, before I could process it, Michael turned to face me, his eyes piercing into mine. "You need to know something," he said, his voice low and steady. "I heard something about the accident. It didn't happen the way everyone thinks." My heart nearly stopped. A cold shiver coursed down my spine. "What do you mean?" I asked, taking a step closer. "What do you know?" He hesitated, glancing back at Sarah before returning his gaze to me, urgency written all over his face. "I can't talk here. We need to get out of this place first." Fear clawed at my throat as I watched him, my mind racing. What had happened to Sarah? What could possibly be worse than the uncertainty I was already drowning in? The overwhelming thought twisted around with my anticipated loss and resentment. A dangerously tangled web. As Michael opened the door, I caught a fleeting glimpse of the world beyond the sterile white walls, the people shuffling in and out like ghosts. Yet now, it felt like destiny had shifted unexpectedly, unsettling and intriguing. A mixture of excitement and dread coursed through my veins as I took a deep breath, stepping into uncertainty, desperate to uncover the truth, even if it tore my heart apart completely. As I stepped out of Sarah's dimly lit room, a surreal haze enveloped me. The hospital's corridors felt foreign, reflecting a reality I hadn't asked for, one filled with flickering lights and the muted, hurried footsteps of strangers. I glanced back at where Sarah lay, so still, as if the world outside needed her light to continue. Yet, there I was, following Michael with a heart full of questions and a mind grasping at fragments of fear and hope. We made our way to a vacant waiting room down the hall, the light dimming further as the sun dipped below the horizon. I barely registered the antiseptic smell now, the wild pounding in my chest drowned everything else out. Michael leaned against the wall, rubbing his temples as though the truth he held weighed heavily on him. "What do you know?" I pressed, my voice breaking the silence like shattering glass. My pulse raced, impatience bubbling beneath my skin. I couldn't let another moment pass without clarity. "It's complicated," Michael started, glancing around the empty room like a conspirator. "I saw the accident happen. I didn't know it was Sarah until later, and by then," he trailed off, swallowing hard. "Just tell me." "Please," I implored, the words tumbling from my lips with urgency. My hands, now devoid of Sarah's warmth, pulsed with a frantic energy, craving connection, even if it was the painful kind. Michael inhaled deeply, as if summoning strength from the air around us. There was another car. It swerved. I saw someone in it, and it's someone you know. It was Jason, from the diner. He was drinking. A heavy chill cascaded over me like ice water. Jason, someone I thought I could trust, a friend I'd laughed with only days ago. "What are you saying?" The words felt lethargic, as if they were dragging chains behind them. I didn't see everything, but I know he lost control. It wasn't an accident the way everyone is saying," Michael confessed, the gravity of his revelation sinking my breath hitched in my throat, a storm of betrayal and fury boiling within me, fighting for air. "How could you not say anything sooner?" I demanded, the rawness of my emotions surging like a wave threatening to crash. "Because I didn't know it was Sarah." His voice rose, escalating the tension. "I thought she was fine. I couldn't be sure I was even seeing things correctly until I heard the news." And then my heart raced faster, splintering into shards of confusion and anguish. "Then what?" "Then I started piecing it together, but it didn't feel right. I thought telling you the truth might make everything worse." Michael hesitated, his expression softening as he looked at me. "But then I remembered how close you were. You deserve to know." A wave of anger coursed through me, mixed with a crippling sense of dread. If Jason was somehow responsible, how was I supposed to face him? How could I navigate my world knowing it was his reckless actions that could cost me Sarah? The thought of vengeance, sweet yet unsettling, began to blossom. "I need to go back to Sarah," I blurted out suddenly, desperate to escape the acrid taste of betrayal. A tidal wave of protectiveness surged through me. "She needs me." Michael stepped aside without protest, allowing me to regain my footing in this chaotic world. But before I could walk away, he called out, "Wait. If you find Jason, can you promise me something?" I paused, turning back to face him. "What?" "Don't act rashly. Anger can destroy more than you realize." I nodded, the reminder of too many precious memories flashing before my eyes, the laughter, the warmth of joy that now felt so distant. I needed to protect what was left, to honor Sarah by making decisions she would approve of. "You don't understand," I began, but the weight of my promise dissipated like smoke as I wrestled with the impending storm. Back in Sarah's room, reality slapped me mercilessly. I opened the door to find her still, peaceful yet so painfully fragile, a reminder of everything worth fighting for. I moved to her side, brushing a strand of hair away from her face. "I'll make this right," I whispered, my breath catching in my throat. But just then, the monitor suddenly beeped frantically, an oppressive alarm shattering the stillness in the room. My heart jolted, and I shot a panicked glance at the nurse rushing in. The world around me began to blur, the emotional swell of hope turned bleak. As I stood, paralyzed between the fabric of my emotions and the unknown threat that lurked in the shadows of fate, a horrifying realization dawned on me: Sarah was slipping away, and with her, perhaps the truth that might shatter everything I thought I understood. The frantic beeping of the monitor set my heart racing, each pulse echoing the dread that clawed at my chest. I stepped back, rooted to the spot, my breath hitching as the nurse swept into the room with an urgency that sent my mind spiraling. My gaze flicked to Sarah's motionless form, connected to machines that hummed and beeped with the weight of my hopes and fears. "Please, what's happening?" I managed to stutter, as the nurse pressed buttons and adjusted the dials with practiced precision. Time blurred, each second felt heavy with unspoken words and unresolved emotions. "Just a moment," she replied, her voice calm but focused. "We're assessing her vitals." "Stay right there." I felt Michael behind me, his presence grounding as the nurse continued to work. But the panic rose like bile in my throat, igniting every fiber of my being with anxiety. The fear of losing Sarah gnawed at the edges of my composure, threatening to unravel the already frayed tapestry of my emotions. Then, the nurse stepped back, her relief palpable. "Her heart rate is stabilizing," she announced, glancing over her shoulder at me. "You can stay close, but she needs rest." "I'll get the doctor." I barely registered the nurse's exit, my focus drawn back to Sarah. I reached for her hand, holding it tight, as if my grip alone could tether her to this world. "I need you to fight, Sarah," I whispered, my voice trembling. "You can't leave me." "Not now." It was only moments later that I heard a soft knock on the door. My heart sank when I turned to see Jason standing hesitantly in the doorway, his eyes wide with a mix of concern and fear. For an instant, the world around me narrowed down to his presence, the memories of our laughter together clashing violently with the knowledge of his recklessness. "What are you doing here?" I bit out, my voice sharper than intended. I heard about the accident," Jason replied, glancing between me and Sarah. "I'm so sorry." "I didn't think his words stumbled, faltering under the weight of unintentional responsibility. "You didn't think," I shot back, anger coursing through my veins. "You didn't think it was reckless to drink and drive? You're the reason she's like this." Jason flinched at my accusation, but I couldn't stop. "You could have killed her. You could have killed so many people." My voice trembled with unbridled fury and sorrow. The reality of Sarah's stillness settled around us like a suffocating fog. He took a small step inside, hands raised as if to defend himself. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone. It was an accident. I swear." Accident. That word ignited something very dark within me, and it collided with the fleeting memory of laughter we shared over greasy fries and milkshakes. I remembered our conversations filled with dreams, the anticipation of youthful adventures, the brotherhood we built. But now, they felt tainted, like ash scattered in a breeze, leaving nothing but a bitter taste in my mouth. "Get out," I demanded, unable to face the cocktail of emotions swirling inside me. "Leave. You're not welcome here, but I want to help," he pleaded, desperation overtaking him. I can't just do nothing. Please, let me in. I need to face this." "Face what?" I challenged, my heart racing as memories of shared moments threatened to drown me. "Face the fact that you could have taken Sarah from me? Your actions have consequences none of us are ready to bear." He shifted uncomfortably, glancing back at Sarah. The flickering lights of the machines around her were a stark reminder of how fragile her existence was. But as I balanced my emotions, a flicker of something else crossed his face: shame. Perhaps even guilt. "Listen," he said quietly, his voice strained. "If you think I'm going to make excuses, you're wrong. I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know how sorry I am. I never wanted any of this." Tears brimming in my eyes threatened to spill over as I wrestled with the depths of my rage and the shreds of empathy still clinging to life within me. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to Jason's story than I could bear to understand right now, but before I could respond, Sarah's monitor beeped again, the sharp sound slicing through my turmoil. The door burst open once more, a flurry of doctors and nurses flooding the room as they rushed toward her bed. Out. Everyone out. One of them shouted, her voice commanding yet laced with urgency, wait, I can't leave her. Not now. I protested, tearing my gaze from Jason to the team hustling around my friend. The world shifted again under the chaos, and as I was ushered out of the room, a desperate thought crossed my mind. What if this was the beginning of a fight I wasn't ready for? What if Sarah didn't pull through? As the door swung shut again, I caught sight of Jason's anguished expression, his plea lost in voiceless desperation. Perhaps nothing felt right anymore, maybe it never would again. I pressed my forehead against the cold wall, feeling as if my heart was being wrenched away with every passing minute, and just as hope began to fade, I caught a glimpse of movement. Sarah's fingers twitched slightly, just enough to merit a spark of possibility. But the doctors were still inside, fighting for her life, and in that moment, the weight of everything, the betrayal, the guilt, and the fear settled heavily on my chest. The stark reality was that I was caught between two worlds, neither letting me breathe, and the fear of what lay ahead gripped my heart with iron fingers. As seconds stretched into agonizing minutes, I stood outside the room, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribcage. I felt the walls pressing in around me, the very air thick with unspent dread and fragility. My thoughts churned chaotically, wrestling with the reality that Sarah was fighting for her life, while I stood helplessly on the other side of that door. That I leaned against the wall, the cold tile pressing against my forehead. The sterile scent of antiseptic clawed at my senses, a bitter reminder of the precariousness of existence. My mind drifted to all those times Sarah had laughed, her spirited nature lighting up the dullest of days. She had been the one who pushed me to embrace life, to chase dreams without abandon. And now, I was left feeling hollow, burdened by the weight of every unspoken word. Taking a shaky breath, I turned away from the door, needing to escape the turmoil swirling in my chest. I wandered down the sterile corridor, each step echoing in the silence, a stark contrast to the cacophony of emotions wrenching inside me. The thought of Jason lingered in the back of my mind, his face twisted in remorse, yet I had no space for forgiveness. Not now. I stumbled into a waiting area, its fluorescent lights harsh and unfeeling. Families huddled close together, their faces full of worry and grief, mirroring the anguish etched into my own. In a distant corner, a woman clutched a child close, whispering soothing words that danced through the air, a gentle melody amidst the chaos. The sight felt like a cruel reminder of everything that was slipping away from me. That I needed to stay strong, for Sarah, but the weight of the situation threatened to crush me. I reached for my phone, desperately scrolling through our messages, each notification a ghost of better times frozen in pixels and words. My heart ached. Suddenly, I felt a soft touch on my shoulder, soft yet steady. It was Michael. His presence anchored me, grounding the whirlwind of emotions that had been spiraling out of control. "Hey," he murmured, his voice a soothing balm. "How are you holding up?" "I don't know," I admitted quietly, a fragile honesty escaping my lips. "I don't know how any of this happened. One moment everything was fine, and now I trailed off, unable to voice the dread that had taken residence within me." "It's okay to feel like this," he said gently, his eyes reflecting understanding. "You're allowed to be angry and scared. But we have to be there for Sarah. She needs us." His words hung in the air, wrapping around me a reminder that even in the depths of despair, hope could still flicker somewhere in the distance. "What if she doesn't make it?" I whispered, the fear of that truth settling deep in my bones. "Then we remember her fight. The strength she always had." He paused, looking into my eyes with a seriousness that demanded attention. "And if she does wake up, we'll be the ones who cheer her on. We owe her that." I looked away, swallowing hard. Michael was right, of course. I needed to reclaim some strength to honor Sarah's spirit. Just as I opened my mouth to respond, a doctor emerged from the room, the air suddenly charged with a sense of urgency. "Are you family?" the doctor asked, fixing me with a gaze filled with empathy but marred by grim professionalism. "Yes," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "We've stabilized her, but she's still in critical condition. We need to keep a close watch on her vitals." It could be some time before there's a change, good or bad, he explained, his words like a leaden weight in my chest. A soft sob escaped my lips, the reality crashing down all at once. Sarah's fight was far from over, and I was left teetering between hope and despair. Can I see her? I asked, the question slipping out before I could consider the ramifications. Only for a moment, the doctor replied, a hint of compassion in his tone. I'm afraid she needs her rest, but I'm sure she'd appreciate your presence. With a wave of the doctor's hand, I entered her room once again, the machines surrounding her like silent sentinels. She lay there, so small and fragile, swathed in tubes and wires that echoed the fragility of her condition. I approached her bedside, my heart aching as I grasped her hand once more, taking comfort in the warmth and softness. Sarah, I whispered, fighting back the tears welling in my eyes. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. You need to come back to us. I can't imagine a world without you, a world where we don't share fries and dreams. My fingers entwined with hers, a connection I hoped would tether her back to reality. Just then, the realization hit me with unexpected clarity. The depth of my feelings for her had transcended friendship. I knew, in that moment, that the looming threat of loss had instantly transformed my heart. If she pulled through, I would not let another day go by without telling her just how deeply she mattered to me. As if responding to my thoughts, I felt a sudden squeeze around my hand, a fleeting, tentative pressure, a whisper of hope piercing through the haze. My heart raced, and I looked down with trembling anticipation. Her eyes fluttered open, hazy yet alert, fiercely searching for something she had momentarily lost. Sarah? The tremor in my voice betrayed my uncertainty, but before she could respond, the monitor beside her emitted a frantic beeping, louder and more urgent than I had ever heard. Panic surged within me. Someone! Help! I shouted, but the world around me narrowed, my focus consumed by the sight of her struggling to remain grounded, caught between two worlds. In that instant, amidst the swirling chaos, I felt terror grip my heart. Just as the door burst open, revealing a team of doctors and nurses rushing in like a storm, another unsettling thought crept in, the realization that perhaps fate had indeed decided to play its hand in ways I had never expected, and it could have devastating consequences. As a whirlwind of activity enveloped Sarah's bed, my heart raced alongside the beeping of the machines. I stood frozen, consumed by a rampant mix of fear and desperation, straining to make sense of the chaos as medical staff darted in and out of my line of vision. Their hurried voices created a distorted symphony of urgency and authority, drowning out my thoughts and the profound weight of reality crashing upon me. Clear the area. A nurse shouted, her voice sharp and imperative. Still, I couldn't move. I wanted desperately to reach out, to anchor Sarah with my presence as she was pulled back from the edge. Instead, the wall of bodies separating us felt insurmountable. I watched as they worked feverishly, my hands clenched into fists at my sides, trying to suppress the tidal wave of helplessness that threatened to swallow me whole. Please, just help her, I managed to rasp, my voice shaky yet raw with emotion. No one turned toward me, but I could sense the urgency in their movements, the grim determination with which they fought for her life. Time slowed to a crawl, punctuated only by the blaring alarms and my frantic heartbeat. Minutes stretched into lifetimes until, finally, a doctor emerged from the frenzy, sweat glistening on her brow. She locked eyes with me, a gaze filled with a resolve that offered both comfort and anxiety. She's stable for now, the doctor said, her voice steady, though I could sense an underlying concern. We need to keep monitoring her closely. She's fighting hard, but it's going to be a long night. Thank you, I whispered, the weight of my fear momentarily lifted, though the uncertainty loomed larger than ever in the distance. As I glanced back toward Sarah's bed, I felt a flicker of movement beneath the sheets. I could have sworn I saw her hand twitch again, as if somehow responding to the life that clung around her like a fragile thread. Sarah, please, I murmured, desperate to convey every unspoken word that might reach her. Come back to me. My heart leaned into that moment, willing her to gain strength, yet the reality of the situation pulsed in my veins, a raw reminder that this battle was hers alone to fight. I retreated to the small waiting area again, the sterile walls a temporary reprieve from the weight of the room, my mind racing with emotions that crisscrossed between hope and despair. As I settled into one of the uncomfortable plastic chairs, I felt my phone buzz in my pocket. Pulling it out, I saw a message from Jason flash across the screen. My stomach dropped. We hadn't spoken since the incident. Rage simmered in the back of my mind, but there was also a whispered curiosity. I'm here at the hospital. I need to see you. Please. The two words "I need" stirred inexplicable anger. Did he really think he had the right to comfort me now? To insert himself back into this fragile moment that was now utterly defined by Sarah's fight, determined to ignore the flood of conflicting emotions, I put my phone down, trying to reclaim the shreds of my focus. But then, the kindness I had seen earlier resurfaced in my thoughts. A woman from the waiting area had shared her coffee with another distraught family, a small gesture enveloped by warmth amidst our collective grief. Maybe it was these sparking threads of humanity that could help fill the void left by the chaos. Gathering my thoughts, I stood and approached the coffee station. My hand trembled slightly as I poured myself a cup and took a moment to breathe, welcoming the warmth of the mug between my palms, cherishing its simplicity. But just as I turned to head back, I noticed the young mother with the child in the corner of the waiting room. She caught my eye, and a small smile lifted the corners of her lips. Is she going to be okay? The woman asked softly, her voice laced with genuine concern. I hesitated, caught off guard by the sweetness of her question amidst my tumult. I hope so. She's very strong. That's good, she replied, her smile unwavering. You'll be there for her, right? Keep fighting alongside her. The unexpected encouragement settled like a balm over me. Yes, I found myself saying, defining my resolve against the weight of uncertainty. She's not alone. Just then, another buzz from my phone broke the moment. My heart sank when I saw it was Jason again. Please. We need to talk. I glanced down, a flicker of conflict igniting in my chest. Somewhere amidst the tumult of my mind, fragments of our past argued fiercely with the mounting bitterness I couldn't seem to just set aside. What exactly did I even feel for him anymore? No, I murmured under my breath, clutching the phone tightly. No contact. Not now. I resolved to focus only on Sarah, on the hope that dimly shone through the encroaching darkness, but before I could turn away, Jason appeared in the doorway of the waiting area, his expression uncertain but desperate, a look I recognized all too well. My breath caught at the sight of him. How could he do this to me? To us? Just when I felt the fragile threads of hope lifting, the slap of his presence sent me spiraling all over again. Please, he started, and in that moment, everything threatened to unravel, my heart aching for clarity amidst the cacophony. Not now, Jason, I said, my voice firm despite the tumultuous feelings stirring inside me. Every part of me screamed at him to leave, yet there was a pulsing curiosity about what he might say next, the depth of uncertainty clashing against my protective instincts. What's happened with Sarah? I know I messed up, but I need you to understand, he pleaded, his gaze locked on mine, vulnerable yet filled with guilt, and it all felt so utterly devastating. In that moment, my world tilted dangerously on the edge of revelation. I simply wouldn't have the answer. I didn't even think I wanted to hear him out anymore. The question, the raw truth, loomed large. Did I want to forgive him, with Sarah's fight hanging in the balance, every moment stretched out into a confrontation that could swallow me whole? I was left with no choice but to navigate this tumultuous tide, teetering on the precipice of unraveling. The air in the waiting area was thick with tension, a whirlwind of emotions swirling around us as I faced Jason, his eyes pleading for a crumb of compassion, a moment of understanding. I glanced once more at the hospital room beyond those sterile walls, the rhythmic beeping of machines echoing Sarah's fragile existence. In that moment, I felt as if my heart was suspended between two worlds, one where Sarah fought for every breath and one where Jason stood with his own tangled web of remorse and regret. That I can't do this right now, I said finally, a wave of exhaustion crashing over me, but even as the words escaped my lips, I could hear the crack in my voice. The raw edge of desperation, the longing for answers both in regard to Sarah and my tumultuous feelings for Jason made me feel doubly stranded. He took a half step forward, but I held up my hand, warding him off. You don't get to just waltz back in. Not when I'm here, terrified for her. My voice quivered despite my best efforts to sound resolute. That I know I messed up, he said, lowering his gaze to the floor, and instantly, his humility softened the edges of my anger. Memories flooded back of the laughter we had shared, the plans that had once wrapped around us like a cocoon, now nothing but echoes in the cold brightness of this hospital. But I'm here. I want to help you. Help her. Before I could respond, a nurse emerged from the double doors to the ICU, her expression somber yet caring. "Excuse me," she said, catching my eye. "Can we have Sarah's emergency contact, please? We need to discuss her condition." My heart raced and my attention snapped back to the situation at hand. I blinked at the nurse, processing her words. Her I began, but in the back of my mind, the nagging presence of Jason loomed large. Would he dare to be part of this conversation? After all, he was as much a part of Sarah's history as I was, even if it felt like a bitter pill to swallow. The nurse nodded, the compassion in her expression making it difficult to remain cold and closed off. "It's important you understand her current state. Follow me." As the nurse turned to lead me down the corridor, I cast a sideways glance at Jason. He was still standing there, shadows of guilt dancing across his face as he looked helplessly trapped in the chaos. Would I really leave him behind in the wake of the gravity of this moment? My heart, tethered to Sarah's fate yet frayed by Jason's presence, swayed perilously. "Come with me," I said abruptly, my decision formed in the moment of desperation. Part of me wanted to keep him away, to shield my heart from whatever hesitation and uncertainty he might bring. But there was a larger force urging me toward openness, maybe even forgiveness, for the sake of understanding Sarah's reality. Or perhaps just for my own sanity. We followed the nurse into a quiet room, one away from the chaos, where she gestured for us to sit. Her expression remained serious as she pulled out a chair, sitting across from us, the weight of the news ahead palpable in the sterile air. "Sarah is stable but critical. We have her on life support, and while she's responding well to treatment, the next 24 hours will be crucial." The nurse spoke carefully, outlining the steps we'd need to take. Each word was like a hammer, striking my heart with new weight. "We need to talk about the options and what Sarah would want." A steady stream of fear surged through me, threading into every part of my being. The idea that I may need to make decisions about Sarah's future felt suffocating. I stole a glance at Jason, whose shock mirrored my own. The thought of losing her, or making a choice that went against everything I knew about her fierce spirit, sent a chill through me. "Do you have any questions?" The nurse prompted gently, and I could barely breathe, my mind grasping at the fragments it could understand amid the tidal wave of emotion. Just want to understand how to help her," I stammered, focusing on the only tangible thing I could grasp in that moment. "We need to know what she would want." The nurse nodded, empathy etched into her features. "I understand this is difficult. But sometimes the right thing involves gauging her wishes. If she made any arrangements." The discussion swirled, but most of it washed over me like a distant echo. Jason shifted beside me, uncertainty radiating off him, and I momentarily felt old wounds surface, questioning whether he had any right to be included in this conversation. Should I forgive him for his absence at a time when I needed him the most? Just as I prepared to respond to the nurse, my phone buzzed again in my pocket, the vibrating intrusion rudely breaking the gravitas of the moment. I flinched, feeling sick to my stomach at the prospect of what I might find. Too overwhelmed to resist, I fished out my phone. Another message from Jason startled me. "I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you." I felt a rush of conflicting emotions as I processed the words. They traced across my brain in rapid succession. I wanted to respond, to lash out, to express my fury over the pain he caused, but in the shadow of Sarah's situation, the emotions felt muted and distant. I began, but the words caught in my throat. Had I become too paralyzed by his presence to also advocate for Sarah? The nurse watched the exchange, sensing the tumult and gently asked, "Would you like to see her? Maybe it will help to see where she is at right now." To hold her hand, the suggestion hung in the air like a lifeline, an artery throbbing with potential. I swallowed hard, both terrified and hopeful at the same time. Would the sight of Sarah drive clarity into my heart or further convolute this unbearable mess? "Let's go," I finally said, my heart racing with trepidation. We stood, and my hand tightened around my phone, Jason stepping beside me as we made our way back toward the ICU. I could feel his presence like a shadow at my side, unwanted, infuriating, but essential in some twisted way as we navigated the uncertainty together. But as we approached her room, the dim lights framing the door flickered ominously. My heart dropped as I sensed something was off. Could it be that my fragile thread of hope was about to snap? "Wait," the nurse said, suddenly pausing. "There's someone who needs to talk to you before you can see her." The door swung open, revealing a figure I hadn't anticipated, someone I never expected to see again. "Mom?" I whispered in disbelief, stunned as the air around us thickened with an unresolved tension. How was this moment somehow colliding with everything else I was grappling with at once? In that moment, every fragment of my world spun dangerously, shifting the narrative of my life in ways I couldn't begin to grasp. The weight of the past lay heavily upon my shoulders, pressing me closer to the fight for Sarah, and yet straining against the inescapable truths that were about to unravel. As the door swung wide, revealing my mother, the world around me seemed to tilt unnaturally. She looked older than I remembered, her eyes rimmed with a weariness that gnawed at my heart. It was as if time had carved lines into her face that mirrored the turmoil erupting within me. "Mom," I repeated, my voice barely a whisper, the syllables catching in my throat like stones dislodged from a dam. I felt Jason unconsciously take a step back, as though he sensed the gravity of this encounter even while he remained an unwelcome presence in my mind. "What are you doing here?" The words escaped before I could stop them, tinged with an accusation I didn't fully mean. The years of separation, the silence. "This wasn't how I had pictured any reunion." "That I came as soon as I heard about Sarah," she replied, her voice shaky but resolute. "I couldn't let this happen without being here for you both." In that moment, the memories flooded her absence at milestones, the awkward phone calls, and the heavy silence that always seemed to hang in the air when we spoke. But Sarah's current condition had an undeniable power, pulling us together even as the rift between mother and daughter widened. "Why now?" I pressed, my heart racing faster at the juxtaposition of emotions flooding through me. "Why when she's at her worst?" My protectiveness over Sarah flared to life. It felt like my heart was being squeezed in two unpredictable directions. That I wanted to be there for her before, but I was scared. "I thought I could fix everything from a distance," she admitted, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I was wrong. I should have been here, and I'm sorry." I had expected her to come with excuses, a rehearsed defense for her absence. Instead, she stood before me, vulnerable and stripped of her usually polished facade. The sight of her sadness shook something inside me, sending ripples through the walls I had built around my heart, walls fortified by years of anger and disappointment. Jason's eyes flickered between us, and in that charged silence, I realized how entangled our lives had become: my estrangement from my mother, my own rocky relationship with Jason, and now Sarah, lying in a hospital bed. The complexity of our intertwined stories weighed heavily in the air. "What's going to happen?" I finally asked, the question hovering like a specter between us. I searched my mother's face for answers, but all I saw was a reflection of my own fear. "2 Don't know, sweetie," she admitted, her voice breaking around the words. "But I want to help. I want to support you and Sarah through this." "Help us?" I echoed incredulously. "You, who didn't show up when I needed you most. When I faced my own demons?" The words poured out like a dam breaking. "How can I trust you to help now?" "Because I am here," she replied, her voice trembling with an emotion I had never seen from her before. "I can't change the past, but I can promise to stand with you today. You don't have to do this alone." Her resolve softened the sharp edges of my irritation, and I felt the tendrils of hope warping around my heart. It wasn't forgiveness I felt in that moment, but the possibility of piecing our fractured relationship back together, one jagged shard at a time. But then the reality of our situation crashed back down like ice water. Sarah still lay trapped in that room, fighting battles none of us could comprehend. "We don't have time for this." I exclaimed, desperation building to a crescendo inside my chest. We need to focus on Sarah. Mom's gaze shifted momentarily to Jason, and I caught a flash of something unspoken, a recognition of shared history. The silence stretched out, punctuated by the beeping of machines in the distance, and for a fleeting moment it felt as though the past was colliding with the present. Old wounds were surfacing, threatening to surface into raw conflict, but the ultimatum of Sarah's situation loomed larger than our individual grievances. Let's just see her, I said suddenly, shaking away the turmoil and pushing open the door to the ICU. We have to see her. We stepped into the room, and the air turned colder, denser as I approached the bed. My heart sank as I took in the fragile frame of Sarah, the life support machines beeping in a haunting rhythm that seemed to echo my apprehension. Its monotonous sound was like a countdown, each beep a reminder of how quickly the sands of time were running out, leaving space beside her for my mother and Jason. I reached out, taking Sarah's clammy hand in mine. I felt overwhelmed by the weight of my emotions, as if my heart were anchored to her through this thin connection. For a moment, I closed my eyes, hoping to feel the familiar comfort of her presence. Please, Sarah, you have to come back to us, I whispered, my voice breaking as it trembled through the stillness of the room. Jason shifted uncertainly, and I sensed him hovering behind me, uncertain. Yet, when I turned to look, he stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on her other arm, mimicking my gesture of solidarity. I am here, he said softly, his voice a stranger's echo. We all are. Just then, the rhythmic beeping of the monitor became erratic, and my heart lurched as a sudden alarm rang through the room, a deep, penetrating sound that froze the air around us. My mother gasped, her hands flying to her mouth, and Jason's grip tightened around Sarah's arm. Mom! I called, panic flooding into every crevice of my being. What's happening? The nurse burst into the room, her expression urgent. Everyone out. We need to stabilize her. I felt my heart crack as I was pushed backward, the frantic energy of the nurse enveloping me. No, please. I need to stay. But the words fell away as they interceded, bustling around Sarah's bed, urgency radiating off them like a beacon of dread. I was shoved into the hallway, the door swinging closed with a definitive click, sealing my fate outside. Mom! Jason! I cried out in vain, but the voices of medical staff drowned me out. Stunned, I leaned against the wall, panting as adrenaline coursed through my veins. What if this was it? A wave of terror engulfed my heart. I felt utterly paralyzed, rooted in place as that dreaded sound penetrated deeper, each beep haunting and relentless. Just then, my phone buzzed again, drawing my attention. I glanced at the screen and my breath hitched. Another message from Jason. We need to talk. Little did I realize, those words would lead to a revelation that would shake my world once more, reshaping everything I thought I knew. The sterile sense of antiseptic and despair hung heavy in the air, filling my lungs as I leaned against the cold, unforgiving wall of the hospital corridor. My heart felt like a flurry of wings, desperate to escape the confines of my chest. I pressed my forehead against the cool surface, trying to quell the rush of fears that gripped me, thoughts spiraling like a tempest. Jason's message bounced through my mind, taunting me with its vague urgency. The moment I had read those words, I had felt an unfamiliar pang of dread interwoven with hope, a flicker of curiosity that held a promise, even in the midst of anguish. What did he want to say? More importantly, why did it matter right now? Sarah needed me. In the chaos of the moment, I stole a glance through the glass windows of the ICU. I could see my mother and Jason huddled around Sarah's fragile form, their silhouettes tinged by shadow and sorrow. I strained to hear, my heart racing more furiously than before, amplifying my fear that time was a luxury we could no longer afford. The rhythmic chorus of alarms continued in a jarring symphony. I could see the medical team moving rapidly, masks concealing their expressions, their movements urgent and deliberate. Each second ticked by painfully, leaving me feeling like an outsider to my own life. Then something pulled me back to my phone, the light glowing against the dimness of the hospital corridor. I tapped quickly on Jason's message, my fingers trembling as I sought to compose a response. What about? I typed, my heart pounding against my ribcage. I needed clarity among the chaos, a brief moment of respite that didn't revolve around life support machines and uncertainty. Instead of waiting, I pressed send and clenched my phone tightly, anticipating an answer that might change everything. Time stretched, the seconds dragging like hours, creating an unbearable tension that seeped deep into my bones. It was difficult to take a breath knowing that every tick of the clock represented another flutter of possibility slipping from our grasp. Behind me, I heard the sound of hurried footsteps and turned to find a nurse approaching. Her demeanor was kind yet serious, turning her lips into a thin line of concern. "Are you family?" she asked, her voice laced with urgency. I replied, my voice barely a whisper but still quavering with a mix of dread and determination. "How is she?" The nurse looked back toward the ICU, her gaze grave. "We're working on stabilizing her. She's in critical condition, and we'll need to keep you updated, please." I can't," I faltered, the weight of my emotions spilling out, my vision blurring as tears threatened to surface. "She's my sister. She has to pull through," the nurse softened, her eyes reflecting a compassion that felt like a lifeline thrown amidst the storm. "We're doing all we can," she said gently. "In moments like this, it's important to hold on to hope. Whatever happens, you're not alone." Her words wrapped around me like a fragile embrace, granting me a moment of clarity amidst the whirlwind of fear. I nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of her kindness. "Thank you," I whispered, and it felt almost like a prayer. But just as I began to find a semblance of grounding, my phone buzzed again, snapping me back to the reality around me. The tension in my stomach tightened, a bead of anxiety coiling tighter at the sight of Jason's new message, "Meet me outside. I'll explain everything." The urgency of his words sent a fresh wave of panic washing over me. What could be so important? My pulse quickened as I weighed my options, torn between my desire to know what he wanted and the instinct to remain steadfast by Sarah's side. As more alarms erupted from the ICU, I felt the crushing weight of indecision settle over my shoulders. My heart screamed for a reunion with Sarah, needing to provide her strength and comfort in this vulnerable moment. But the promise of revelation lingered behind me like a keep, beckoning me to venture into the unknown. In a moment of determination, I turned and walked briskly down the corridor, each step pulling me further away from the tense atmosphere of uncertainty that closed around Sarah. I fumbled with the door leading outside, a shaft of moonlight spilling into the dim hospital, illuminating the choices that awaited me. As I stepped into the cool night air, Jason was already waiting, leaning against the building with a mix of apprehension and determination. The shadows cast by the streetlights danced around him, masking his expression as I approached. "What happened?" I urged, feeling breathless with anticipation. His gaze locked onto mine, and for a brief moment, I caught a glimpse of vulnerability in him, a flicker of doubt that made my heart clench painfully. "I didn't want to tell you like this, but there's something you need to know." About Sarah, everything else faded into the background, the noise of the hospital dissipating as though we existed in another realm. "What? Please, just tell me." My voice was a strained plea, bearing my desperation. He hesitated, and in that moment of uncertainty, my phone buzzed one last time as a chilling notification illuminated the screen, a message from the emergency contact I had neglected to save in my phone. It flashed at me, a dark omen that sent a shiver through my spine. The world around me felt as if it were tilting dangerously again, shadows lengthening as Jason started to speak. "It's about what happened before she. What if I told you there was more to the story than we realized?" But the rest of his words were drowned out, my heart plummeting as I scanned the notification, the faces of my loved ones fading into an unsettling void. The revelation lingered in the air, heavy and suffocating, as I braced myself against the oncoming storm. My sister's life, my mother's return, and now Jason's loaded words, they were all tangled together in a web of unforeseen consequences. Whatever happened next, nothing would be the same again. I stood there, the night air thick with unspoken truths, trying to steady my racing heart as Jason's voice faded into the ether around us. Suddenly, the cosmos seemed cruelly distorted, as if fate were wielding its power with a callous hand. I gripped my phone, the notification still glowing ominously before me as my pulse quickened. I breathed in, the sound echoing within my own body, drowning out all other sensations. I needed clarity before the chaos engulfed me completely. What do you mean there's more to the story? I forced the words out, my voice trembling. We need to focus on Sarah. What could possibly be more important than that? Jason's shoulders slumped slightly. He ran his fingers through his hair, the weight of the revelation pressing down on him, weighing on me like a stone. She wasn't just in the wrong place at the wrong time. I saw them fighting, Sarah and Jason, before the accident, he finally managed to say, the admission spilling forth like water from a broken dam. I didn't realize it was serious until later. I meant to tell you, I just didn't want to believe it. A sudden chill gripped my gut, his words intertwining with fear and uncertainty like a vine choking a tree. Everything shifted, the world around me dimming momentarily as I recalled the last moment I had seen Sarah, full of laughter, planning futures and dreams that felt attainable. And now? Now, all of that lay in peril, the branches of our lives fraying with each second she lingered in that hospital room. What do you mean they were fighting? I asked, my voice barely a whisper as reality began to coalesce into a tragically twisted narrative. About what? Why didn't you tell me this before? My emotions flared, intertwining heartbreak and betrayal, burning like fluid fire through my veins. That I didn't know it was serious. It felt wrong to say anything without proof. He thought they were just having a bad day, he admitted, guilt washing over him like a tidal wave. But then I saw drivers do reckless moves on the road after they drove off. I didn't know it would end like this. I thought they'd just cool off. I felt my heart twist, painfully aware of my own naivete. So, what you're saying Ish was upset with him before she got into the car? Jason's eyes bore into mine, dark and troubled, and suddenly everything spiraled. That I tightened my grip on the phone, the notification still flickering like a beacon of dread. If he had been drinking, if they had been fighting, the weight of the truth rested heavily on my chest. No one was in a perfect place when they made decisions, but could this have been preventable? With sudden clarity, I rushed to Jason. Where is he? Where's Jason? We need to get him here, or need to confront him, I said in desperation, teetering on the edge of solving a puzzle that felt impossible to piece together. He opened his mouth but hesitated. You shouldn't go back in there with that kind of fury. You'll only make things worse. I'll talk to him. Maybe, just maybe, if you bring your mom in with you, we can all figure this out together. In that moment, something snapped within me, a surge of fighting spirit rising up from the ashes of fear and despair. I needed to fight for Sarah, to confront those shadows that loomed over every fragile thread that connected our destinies. In doing so, I wove Jason into this tangled tapestry, his intentions neither truly malevolent nor purely helpful, just a boy caught in a collision of teenagers trying to navigate the waters of conflicting emotions. No, I affirmed, the weight of resolve solidifying within me. I'll handle it. I could see the protestations on his lips, but the fire had ignited within me, summoning the strength of a family I still could hold on to. And with that, I felt resolved to confront Jason. I took a deep breath, sending a silent prayer to any higher power listening, hoping for grace, for clarity, and for survival in this fragile web we all had spun. I stepped back into the hospital, each step heavy with dread and anticipation, the critical nature of Sarah's state drumming within me as I approached her room, and Jason was already there, talking to my mother in hushed tones, their voices blended low and labored, locked in a vortex of emotions that swirled dangerously like a storm. As I stepped forward, my heart pounded as if to prepare itself for whatever confrontation loomed ahead. My resolve hardened, I wouldn't let this moment slip through my fingers again. Jason, I called, my voice steady despite the tremors rippling through my heart. He turned, surprise flickering across his face, quickly turning to concern as our eyes locked. We need to talk, the gravity of my tone ousted any trace of humor. Jason's face went pale, perhaps a memory of moments past crashing into him as he nodded slowly in understanding. My mother stood solidly beside me, her presence quiet yet unwavering, ready to lend strength as I navigated the truth. What happened last night? The fight? You need to tell us everything. I won't let this rest until I know the truth, until I know how to help her. The words dripped from my lips, each syllable infused with the weight of urgency, a plea driven by love, desperation, and unending loyalty towards my best friend. Jason swallowed hard, eyes darting nervously from my mother's concerned gaze to mine, and then the silence fell like a curtain, thickening the air surrounding us. Finally, he spoke, voice shaky and laced with guilt. She was angry. I should have stepped in. Here were things I didn't understand. His breath hitched as he opened himself up in a raw confession. I don't know why she got in the car with him after our fight. I just didn't realize how much of it hurt her. But even amidst the unfolding darkness, even as moments felt eclipsed by guilt and responsibility, I realized anew the power of my connection, my friendship with Sarah, and all that it encapsulated. These fissures of the past could not break the skin of the future. We would heal. At that moment, my phone buzzed once more in my pocket, and the action jolted me back into focus. Lifting it, the world stilled for a second, the notification heavy with implications resting on my conscience. Hey, I just wanted to check on you. I'm outside. At that moment, I finally released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The rawness of it all settled over me. I knew who that message came from and what preference it represented. Let's go see Sarah, I said, determination coursing through me, urging me forward. I gestured toward the door. My mother nodded in agreement, proving that perhaps a road toward healing demanded exposure to all shades of truth, however painful. Perhaps that was the way forward, to protect our perspective on forgiveness amidst violence and pain. But as we stepped into that ICU room, my heart pulsed with the knowledge, we couldn't hide from the truth if we were going to face it together. Darkness and light intermingled alike, and as we stepped in, I clasped Sarah's hand again, feeling the coldness beneath my fingertips yet igniting hope through our bond. You're not alone, Sar. No matter what, we're all right here with you. But it was then, amidst all the uncertainty, lost struggles, and echoed whispers, that Sarah's eyelids fluttered slowly, and her eyes opened tentatively, as if awakening from deep within a dream. The heart monitor beeped steadily in response, as I leaned closer, feeling the wave of relief wash over me. Sarah? My voice cracked while the warmth enveloped around her fragile figure, her salvation rising like dawn breaking through the night, and in that moment, that simple miracle of presence charted a new course before us, a path woven through pain yet entwined alongside redemption, shaping into something resilient, something powerful enough to withstand the trials ahead. With each passage of time, I realized that there were no easy endings when hearts intersected, paths troubled by adversity and heartache. Instead, the beauty rested in cherishing connections, cementing loyalty, and understanding that love could rise anew even from the ashes of chaos. You have to fight, Sarah, I murmured softly, my voice trembling. We all need you. And with those words hung firmly in the air, we stood, collectively strong, braced for whatever awaited us on the horizon, the echoes of uncertainty melding into the promise of tomorrow. The stories we wove, intricately tangled by betrayal and devotion, all led to this, the raw, undeniable tapestry of our lives intertwined with love. Fighting through the shadows, whatever lay ahead, we would face it, together.